So I always knew that there were production woes with Legend of Korra, but recently I've come into some new information and I didn't realize how deep that rabbit hole really went. Hey y'all, welcome to today's Geek Talk. I would like to discuss a little bit of, mostly for people who have not watched Legend of Korra or are currently watching Legend of Korra and are wondering about some of the pacing issues, things that you might not have liked in the show. I want to preface this here in saying that there's a lot of context that people don't often get or are kind of forgetting about when it comes to Legend of Korra, and I kind of wanted to highlight them here. I also kind of am learning in the same regard as with you guys, the audience, some new information that I wasn't even aware of. Now, to preface everything that I'm about to talk about today, there are some things that I can verify that I experienced with the original airing of the show. There are some things that I can verify based on research that I've done, but there are other things that might just be hearsay, and I will make sure to specify anytime that comes up. I also would like to say that we shouldn't just blanket statement say Nickelodeon did this or Nickelodeon did that. It's always way more nuanced than that, in the sense that a big conglomerate company doesn't necessarily always know what's going on with each individual thing. It's the same kind of criticism I hold against people who automatically want to say Disney this and Disney that when it comes to Star Wars material, when really you should be talking about Kathleen Kennedy, who was heading up a lot of the things that a lot of us Star Wars fans were having issues with. So keep that in mind too as we go through some of these talking points. Whoever had these issues with Brkye and Nickelodeon, when I say Nickelodeon, I'm not talking about the entire company. I'm talking about whoever were the executives of the branch of, whoever was overseeing Legend of Korra at that time. And to preface that and to make that very clear, we can see from, today's version of Nickelodeon, today's representation of Nickelodeon via Twitter or their official YouTube page, that these people like Legend of Korra and that they want to put it forward. They want to actually showcase some of those things that we're going to be talking about today. So keep all of that in mind. There are going to be times where I'm going to say Nickelodeon, but don't judge that as Nickelodeon, the entire company, but whoever was overseeing Legend of Korra at that time. First off, I would like to thank Healthy Dose of Fran for putting me, well, I don't actually think she did it, but I think on Twitter she retweeted somebody or liked someone's comment thread about the production woes of Legend of Korra. I'm going to put all of that stuff in the links in the description. I'm going to have their people's faces here so you guys can follow them if you want to. Thank you guys for making me aware of this information. Let's talk about it now. Okay, so first, Brkye had to fight the network to make the next Avatar a girl in this series. This one I can verify. I actually did watch the behind the scenes interview with one of the animators, one of the Korean animators, who said that there was some pushback on the main character being a girl instead of a boy. And there apparently also is out there's a commentary track from the Blu-rays where this is also reaffirmed. I don't have verification on the commentary itself, so keep that in mind, but I do have a link to the interview with that Korean animator who does say that that actually did happen, which is unfortunate. You would think that, Nickelodeon would be okay with having a girl protagonist. They've had them in the past during that time period, and we're not even talking that long. This is like 5 years ago, or 6 years ago. So it seems kind of odd that would happen, but that is something that happened, and it was a reason why a lot of their pre-production was actually held up before they could even start the project. Number 2, they could not overly develop Korrasami romance. They had to get permission just for that last scene with them holding hands and going into the spirit world. It really makes me upset when people give credit to Nickelodeon for giving us Korrasami when Nickelodeon didn't do anything. They didn't want it at all. So for this too, I don't know, I can't verify this one exactly, but you definitely, or at least I could definitely feel that at the end of the series, that the relationship felt very tacked on towards the end. And I was one of those people, I was in the camp of being like, I was not expecting this at all. I didn't see this coming up. It seemed like it came out of the blue. And the reason for that is because, I don't think it was properly set up. And now, kind of getting this behind the scenes kind of information, the thought process behind that, or the reason why it feels that way, is because the creators themselves were very hesitant on how much they could show a bi relationship. So this one, while I can't verify it exactly, it feels very true to me, but I am going to put a little thing right here to tell you that this is an unverified hearsay type of situation. Number 3, Nickelodeon originally only bought 1 season, and it led everyone to believe it would be one and done type of deal. Partway through production of the first season, the latter half if I'm remembering it correctly, Nickelodeon suddenly changed their minds. Plus, they ordered 3 additional seasons so that the writers had to scramble and change things last minute when a good chunk of season 1 was finished and or had started airing. Plus, this is why season 1 seems like its own thing, has a different tone, and speeds through the plot. It's also why season 2's beginning is particularly rough, and it takes a while for the show to get back on its feet. This one I can verify, this one is true. They were only supposed to have 1 season. They only had, I think, 13 episodes ordered or something like that, and they were halfway through production when they realized that they were going to be renewed for a second season, and that is a huge reason of why both book 1 and book 2 feel so rushed, because they didn't know that they were going to have more series. And that's what I talk about a lot in my reviews, which I've talked about already with my Before You Watch Korra. So if you want to see those series and more about that, you can watch it there. Plus, partway through production of season 4, Nick slashed their budget out of the blue. The reason the recap episode exists and reuses previous footage while Avatar: The Last Airbender got the Ember Island Players episode was because that was the only way they could deal with the sudden lack of money without sacrificing their vision for the finale. I can also verify that that was the case with season 4. I remember a lot of people were kind of upset with that episode because it felt more typical of a recap episode, and we're used to, Avatar: The Last Airbender giving us a very, a good spin on it, where with the play being there and everything. This one felt more conventional of a TV network. I definitely was part of that as that was happening. Season 4 definitely had a lot of different things going on, which I think the thread talks about more, is that half of it was put on TV, half of it was put on online, and you didn't know if it was going to be online or on TV at what point. It was very hard to kind of follow the last 2 seasons of Korra, especially after season 2, and the flack that came from that in terms of the fan base. Nickelodeon wasn't quite sure if they were going to continue with the series or not, and I think that very much was felt throughout season 4 and season 3 a little bit. So then the thread goes on to say this: the finale was pulled from its air block location with less than a week's notice and put Nick's website streaming option, which sucked at the best of times and could not handle that many people trying to watch at the same time, if they were able to watch at all. I can attest to this. I used to watch most of the Korra episodes. I think I watched all of the Korra episodes online, if I'm not mistaken, on Nickelodeon, because they had it on Nickelodeon, I think exclusive for like a week or 2 when it first came out. And yeah, the player wasn't the best. I remember it crashing a lot. I remember having to, if I ever try to skip around in the player, it would go back to the beginning of the episode, and it was not a fun experience at all. One of the creators also had to take his block shortly after the finale air to clarify that Korra and Asami were dating and were bi because they could only get away with the hand-holding scene, and there were a ton of fans at the time saying that it was unclear and that they were just very good friends. Yep, in 2014, people were still saying that anything short of tongues down throats or sex scenes meant that they were just gals being good pals. Yes, so that was a huge thing. I remember this came off of the back of a game I used to play called The Last of Us. There was a DLC that came for that. It was a prequel story about our character Ellie. Spoiler alerts, by the way, for Last of Us, the original game, where in that game she kisses a girl, and people were like, still, even with her kissing a girl, people were like, nah, Ellie's just going through a phase. She's not really gay. Like that really was a thing. Even in 2014, like you would think that we would be progressive in 2014. That was actually an issue back in the day, of people not wanting to believe that a character is a certain way, and the fact that there was the possibility of Korra and Asami being bi, which is definitely alluded to. Like I definitely understood, like when it happened in the moment when they were holding hands and looking at each other before they go in the spirit world, I understood it at that point. It's just that for me, I didn't see the lead up for that. But upon my rewatch, I definitely can see where they were going with that. There was definitely some flirting and a little bit of blushing between the two of them. But I just didn't pick up on that, on my first viewing of the show. Also, it wasn't just that Korra was a woman Nick had an issue with. It was also that she was a woman of color. A white female avatar they would have grumbled about, but eventually came around to. But they fought the creators to make Korra anything other than a woman of color, and they hated that one of their most popular shows with the older demographic starred someone who was neither male nor white. This one is completely unverified. I've never actually even heard of this before. The fact that I know that they had issue with her being a woman, and they were hesitant if, they're the demographic would take to that character, and I can kind of understand that a little bit, because on my own channel most of my viewers here are male. I think it's like 30% or less female on my channel and 70% male. So if I'm seeing those sorts of numbers in terms of interest of Avatar, I'm sure Nickelodeon's seeing that too. So I'm sure they might have had some misgivings about it and maybe had pushback too, but I've never actually heard anything, at least anything verified, that they had an issue specifically with Korra being a woman of color. Again, that's completely unverified. I am going to report it here because that's part of the thread that I'm kind of talking about. But for me, in my personal experience and what I know about the behind the scenes, I've never actually seen that. This is completely new information to me, so take that with a grain of salt. And for that, they did everything in their power to fuck over production so that they could cancel the show and point to the numbers as a reason why they did it, not because they're racist, sexist, biphobic, homophobic, and misogynistic. Season 1, they actually rated number 4 like on the Nielsen ratings for season 1, so it was actually a very popular show. So that part of the thread is true, that it was one of their most popular shows, though it was having this weird being on TV but then also being online thing and kind of getting messed around with. So that part I can verify, like the whole the putting it out and being messed around with, and also it being a popular show but it not being represented as a popular show in terms of like the social media that was going on back then. But again, I can't really verify that they actively were trying to go against the show because Korra was specifically a woman of color and she was also bisexual. I don't know about that one so much. I would have to get more information about that and, you know, more sources. I just haven't. I've tried for the past day. I tried to find sources on if that was the case or not. I couldn't find it. But that is it. That is pretty much all the information I have from this thread. Some of it was new to me. Some of it was stuff that I was already familiar with. I wanted to put this out here because I wanted people to be aware who are going through Legend of Korra right now. Some of the issues that you might have, like some stuff with the pacing and stuff like that, was due to production, them not knowing if they were going to be able to go ahead. Again, that's what I talked about in my reviews. The reason why part 1 and 2 feel kind of different and separate and like standalone versus books 3 and 4, which were deliberate and they knew where they were going from that point. Also the stuff about, you know, it being put on TV and then also put online literally week to week. 1 week it will be on TV, 1 week it will be exclusively on TV. So someone who's just watching it on TV wouldn't even know that an episode came out and they would skip over episodes. So there was a lot going on with Korra at the time that kind of plays into what kind of happened to the story. But the thing I want you to kind of understand about this is that even the fact that all this stuff happened to Korra, we got a pretty solid show. Like, I think foundationally Korra is very functional. There are some things that I have critiques about, whether we're talking about the quick pacing, some of the character dynamics, some of the character arcs not being recognized in those earlier seasons. But ultimately, we got a pretty darn good show for everything that it was dealing with, all the mess that kind of surrounded it during that time in, you know, 2013, 2014 time period. But that's it. I want to hear from you guys in the comments. What do you guys think about this comment thread? Does some of this stuff seem like it's plausible? Do other things seem like it's pretty far-fetched? I want to hear from you guys, but let's be nice in the comments, because I know how you guys can get, especially with a topic like this. Be nice in the comments. Let's just, we're all fans here. Let's just, you know, talk like, you know, like civil people. But I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace, love, and remember, be water, my friends.